Okay, so I'm sitting here with Brady Foster, and I know a lot of the times I do mention Brady, but we rarely see him. I think the last video Brady was in was when I came up to your old office,
Yeah.
and you were in the editing stage for Animals, and we were just discussing the film. We were just visiting, really. It was
Uh-huh.
this is just a random conversation I thought we would have today. Um, I was thinking, when I was going through all those old drives, uh, I came across the very first picture that I took of you sitting in the captain's chair,
Oh
and
yeah.
I
And
that
that
picture.
that was how long ago? 8 years ago,
Oh
maybe?
yeah, I think it was at least 7.
Wow.
And I remember. I don't remember. I think you came up to the studio through John Hughes. Was that it?
That's right. Yeah. My wife worked at the university that he was working at, and he was a security guard there. So that's how they met. And through talking with Jana, he found out that I was a big fan of the original series. So
Uh,
that's how that started. So and then we all had a meeting or had a lunch
I rem-
somewhere.
Yeah, I
So
remember. I think we had breakfast.
yeah.
We went to. I don't remember the name of the place now. Was it? No, I don't remember. I remember where it is, but I don't remember the name. It was a little
Uh-huh.
cafe,
Yeah, it was
and
kind of a retro
yeah,
cafe, which was fitting considering our love for the original series. So,
yeah. It's amazing they didn't have pictures of Trek in there. They had like
yeah,
older movie pictures and stills and TV shows, but nothing
right.
Star Trek related, which
Yeah.
was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
So, how did it come to you that there was a studio that had a Star Trek bridge set and all that? I'm assuming, did the wife tell you?
Yeah, my wife Jana, she told me, and she told me there was a group of fans that had built a replica of the original set. So when I found out, I thought that was just the coolest thing ever, and they were looking for people to collaborate with in terms of video production and all of that. So it's just kind of it's funny how things in life will line up like that, when you have a love for something. And I happen to be in Oklahoma City, one of the few areas in the country that had a bridge set. It's just amazing. And so I was more than happy to meet with John Hughes and all of you guys. And we had that breakfast, and I got to tour the set, which was, it's amazing. Not many
You
people
know,
can say that they've been on the
it
bridge.
it's kind of funny. You mentioned Oklahoma City, and I can't count how many people that I've talked to. I said, "Yeah, there's a bridge set in Oklahoma City," and they're like, "Where?"
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Right, right. Yeah.
Aren't you guys still riding horses? You
Yeah.
have a bridge.
You're supposed to have
But
covered wagons, not the bridge of the, advanced
now,
starship.
uh,
So,
initially, if I remember correctly, way back then, you had a plan to shoot a Star Trek fan film when I was or for your uncle.
it was with my uncle at the time. He had an idea and a concept, and we had discussed it, and I think we had scripted it. But it's just how things are. Sometimes you start things and different projects, and it just they take on a life for a while, and then you can't finish them because of other circumstances or whatever. So I'm pretty sure we both got busy and just weren't able to finish it. So
Yeah,
um,
I remember your uncle. He's actually on the monitor in the bridge scene, right?
yeah, the very first production we did, he's on the monitor. It's kind of staticky and fuzzy, and my uncle Mark, he's a great fan of the show, always has been, and ever since childhood, I've always, at any family gathering we'd have, the two of us would be sitting down talking about Star Trek, or what was in development and all of that. So it's
Do
just
you remember? Do you remember how old you were when you first saw the original series?
I remember my very first uh, glimpse of the show. It was a shot of Mr. Spock, and I'm pretty sure that episode is "The Devil in the Dark," because I remember the backdrop behind him was a kind of like a cave, and it was a blue tone color. So I'm pretty sure that was that episode. But I never stopped loving it since, grown up with the
How
show. So
old were you then when do you remember?
I believe, I'm pretty sure I had to have been 3 or 4, maybe, so this would have
Wow.
been, this would have been, 1984, 1985, which puts the show at what, almost 20 years old at that point. So,
Yeah.
um, so
Well,
it's
yeah, the Undiscovered Country was I believe the 25th anniversary.
25th, and I remember it very vividly, and
Was
it's
that 1996? I think
1991.
91. Okay.
Yeah, and I actually remember that very vividly because, just a few years ago, thinking, gosh, now we're at the 25th anniversary of the 25th, 50th anniversary. So, and just thinking how time flies, and how we've lost a lot of the original crew,
Yeah.
and it's just what an important part of culture they are for us now.
Yeah, and it kind of takes on a whole new life when you watch the show and these actors are gone now.
Yeah.
I remember after Leonard Nimoy died, I kind of I've always liked The Wrath of Khan,
Hmm.
but I was almost kind of leery to watch it because I just
Yeah.
didn't have the heart, at least not immediately. I didn't have the heart to see him die in that movie, that character.
Right.
And when I finally did, I don't know, it just made that death scene just really, really hard to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. It took on an additional meaning, with his passing,
Yeah,
so
I miss
um,
those actors so much.
yeah, I agree. They're, it kind of like, you grow up with these actors, you grow up with these people, and they, in a sense, they become an extension of family to you, and
Exactly.
you lose them, and it's just, you're grateful for the memories that you have,
It
and
it kind of reminds me of something James Doohan said during an interview after Star Trek Five, and one of the reporters asked him, "Why do you think people keep coming to see Star Trek? Why is Star Trek still popular?" And he said something along the lines of, "I don't know. It's not about our age. People just like to see these characters working together."
yeah,
So they do become your family after a while, and
yeah,
it's kind of weird how fictional characters take on a life of their own, and
yeah.
sometimes
You,
they're just as real as anybody.
Yeah, and it's funny. People always try to say, "Well, what made the show so successful? Why does it resonate?" Almost 60 years later, 50, 60 years later, and people can say, "Oh, it was the stories or whatever," but I really think it comes down to the heart of the show and the characters. That family dynamic that all the crew had is just resonates so well with people. I think it's very idealistic in the sense that it shows people of all stripes working together, having a family, and for those of us that are fans of the show, that resonates so well with us because we love that idea of everybody working together, being family. So
Exactly. One of my first episodes that I can remember was "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield."
mhm.
And one of my earliest memories was that scene where ambassador, I think he was an ambassador. Was he Bill? Was he called an ambassador in that episode? The one Frank Gorshin played. I know his name was Bill, but I seem like they might have
Yeah.
said Ambassador Bill. But
Okay.
he kind of rebuked Spock when he said, "Commander Spock, are you blind? I'm black on this side, and he's white on this side." And that look that Kirk looks at Spock like, "My goodness, what the hell's this guy talking about?
Yeah.
Does that really make a difference?" And that
Yeah.
moment stuck with me
Yeah.
because you just have these characters, and no less in the '60s when we had all kind of civil rights problems going on, and you
Yeah.
had this show that spoke and said, "We're still going to get along.
Yeah.
We're going to
Right.
have a future together." To
Yeah.
me, that's just incredible. I think the original series is sometimes taken for granted,
Yeah.
but this show back in that day and that time period in our history, this show was really breaking barriers and had a lot to say
Right.
about what we could be.
Yeah.
And I really admire it for that.
Yeah. I agree. And I that scene that you talk about, what I love about that is the reaction of the characters to, this idea
Yeah,
that people would be prejudiced about what's
yeah.
different on, it's,
Something so trivial.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what?
yeah, and
It's like
it really says, hey, this to think that way is absurd. Why are you thinking that way? And
it's almost like Kirk was like they didn't have any basic concept of what is he what
yeah,
you talking
exactly,
about.
right, yeah, yeah, and that's beautiful to see, and I wish more people could see that uh, and really understand that today, So we need to move beyond seeing things through that, you know, who's in what camp or whatever. We need to look at each other as human. That's the important thing, So
I
we're all
agree.
family when you boil
Yeah,
it down. So
we're we could be so much stronger together
right,
than always having animosity and strife with each other and fighting ourselves. So it's
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah,
I've always wondered what we could accomplish if we just worked together.
right, yeah, absolutely. So
I imagine it would be pretty limitless.
yeah, I think the show that we love so much is a good picture of what we could accomplish.
Let
So
me now. Someone had mentioned that Star Trek's ideology is really unrealistic. That human beings will never be that way. What do you think about that?
well, I think that's again that's to me that limits your thought. If you think, oh, it'll never happen, then it's never going to happen. You gotta. We need those ideals. We have to be able to say yes, down the road we can make this better. That gives us a vision and a hope to really work towards. And if we don't have that, then what's the point? You know, I think shows like Star Trek are there to show us that, hey, if we can get on board with a future that's optimistic and hopeful, that's going to drive and direct people in that direction. You hear so often how many people got into engineering or medicine or whatever because of the
Yep,
show, and
true.
I think for me, what I've learned from the show is that sense of optimism. To always look forward to the future. And to be hopeful about it, because if I don't have hope, where are my kids going to get hope from? How are they going to be hopeful for the future? And I think we need to have that, even regardless of what things look like today. The '60s were turbulent. They had
It's
that
true.
show on the air. They were looking ahead to the future. So I think we need to do the same thing. And I think it's a common mistake that I think uh, a lot of science fiction has fallen into now is it's very hopeless and kind of dreary and dark, and uh, the future is not something you're really looking forward to. You don't want to live in the future that these shows portray. And that's the difference with, at least for me, the original series and to an extension the Next Generation series too.
Yeah,
That timeline.
that's kind of how Star Trek stood out from all
Yeah.
the other shows.
Right.
Some people might say, "Oh, Star Trek's kind of nerdy or geeky or
Sure.
whatever,"
Sure.
but it was one of those series that always offered a bright future.
Right. And if that's
And that's
nerdy or
not the
geeky, that's fine. Yeah.
yeah, that's not to say that we're not going to have problems in the
Right.
future. I mean, the Enterprise did have phaser weapons on it, and
Sure.
it did
Yeah.
use them, so there's going to be problems.
Yeah.
But it was always hopeful for a better future. And like Kirk said in one of the episodes, yes, we're killers, but we're not going to kill today.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, that optimism is what I miss in Star Trek today.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And I think that separates current Star Trek from past Star Trek, where it was always hopeful.
Right.
And I just don't really see much hope in current Star Trek or the ideals that we will be better. I think
Agree.
those ideals are lost now.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I think unfortunately, the show as it stands now, if you can even call it a trek to the stars anymore. Is really uh, it's more about warfare and whether that's warfare between characters or whatever. It's just endless destruction. And there's no sense of building or creating a hopeful future. Which just boggles my mind that people want to fall into that trap. So
So getting back to you coming to the studio. Now I remember when you came to the studio, you showed me uh I think it was a revised opening that you'd done for the original series. Because I think you had your iPad, or was it maybe your phone?
yeah, yeah,
Do you remember that?
I do. I was playing around with some software, visual effects, and I think I had found a model, the Enterprise, that I downloaded and ran through the program to create visual effects. So yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
Yep. I happened to, when I was going through the older hard drives, I happened to come across that, and I watched that again, and it's like, wow, that brings back some memories.
yeah, yeah. That's boy, that takes me back. I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned
Yeah,
it, but
that was even back then that was pretty impressive.
thank you.
Of
Yeah,
course, that was what that was. Uh, if we met 7 years ago, was that like made 6 years or 8 years ago?
I'm
What
sure I made it around the same time because
same
I
time?
think at the time I was experimenting with new software and plugins that I had gotten. The video business is always evolving, constantly pushing forward. So I was trying to at least be up to date on what I can incorporate, for clients and whatnot. And at the time, 3D was starting to really was an area that I was really starting to get into, So uh,
So when you came to the set, um, and after you visited and went home after the fact, how did you tell that experience to your wife?
I don't remember exactly what I told her, but I just I remember. I think the very first time I went, Scott said, "Come back around behind the bridge.
Oh,
Don't go through the front." And so, there's this really cool sense where you walk behind and you go inside the turbo lift, and Scott was there, and he opens the turbo lift and it opens up,
yeah,
and you get the Captain Kirk walks onto the bridge
yeah.
perspective.
That's how they used to do it. They would shut everything off and have you come in through the turbo lift and just
Yeah,
kind of like experience the stepping onto the bridge.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like you remember the motion picture when Kirk first goes onto the bridge and the turbo lift doors open. It's like that kind of
Yeah.
sense of, oh, I'm back, I'm on the ship.
the
So
the first time I saw it, I went through it the same way, and it
yeah,
was wow. It was magical.
yeah, yeah,
I think I might have got a little teary eyed when I saw that bridge for the first time.
right, yeah,
It was like stepping back into the '60s. Like I was there, but it
yeah,
that's how it felt.
yeah,
So you now initially did John Hughes want you to help them because they were conceiving Ajax? I think they had a script at that time.
yeah.
And one thing I've always wondered is why didn't they ever ask you to help out on that?
I think they did initially. I think, and my memories might be a little fuzzy from that time because it's been a while, but I believe we had talked about filming and so on, but I don't know if anything ever came forward because I don't know if there were any meetings from that point forward. Um,
I don't think, aside from that first day that you came down to the studio, I don't think they ever asked you because I was kind of I had a story
yes, I
and
remember that.
I was kind of listening to see if John was going to ask you to help out on Ajax because if he was, I wasn't going to ask you
Right.
to help out on Valiant, and so we started talking. I said, hey, I got this story. I would be so happy if you would. Actually, I didn't know what to expect. I thought you might say, "Oh, what? No, I don't know you. First met you. What? No." But yeah, I told you about the story, and you were really receptive. And
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, because you were the first one to really say, "Hey, I've got this." You had the script. You were like, um, really presenting you know, the stuff that I could see that was on paper, and it's like, oh yeah, we can shoot this, we can film this. So it was something tangible, and I don't know, because it was John Hughes and it was Charlie, right, at the time
Yeah.
with
And
Ajax. So
I remember John later on, or maybe it was Charlie saying, we were going to ask Brady, but you did.
gotcha. Oh,
So,
okay,
so I don't,
okay.
that's why I'm under the impression that they never asked you.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
I don't recall being specifically asked to say, "Hey, we've got a script. We can start filming on this
and,
date or whatever." So,
I just
um,
always kind of wondered why, because back in those days, they didn't have a photographer. So,
yeah,
and John already knew you before me. So I kind of thought, well, maybe it seems natural that he would ask you, but
yeah, yeah,
he never did.
yeah, and he may have said, "Hey, we could get together and collaborate." Because I do remember, I think he mentioned possibly me storing my video equipment at the time. I was kind of in a state of uh, back then. I had just parted ways with my old business partner, and so I was really kind of branching out on my own. And he had mentioned me storing video equipment up at the studio possibly, and stuff like that. So I think discussions were moving that way. It just never got to that point where it was like, hey, we can shoot next Monday or something like that. I don't remember us being at that point where we could say, let's start filming next week or whatever. But you were there and ready to go, and it's like, hey, I've got some time on my hands. Let's
Yeah.
make it happen. Make it
I
so.
think,
As
yeah, I think we were both struck by just wanting to make something Star Trek.
yeah,
Uh, One thing I will say about John though is that he's despite you shooting Ajax, he's always been really helpful.
yeah,
He's really helpful, and he's really a nice guy.
yeah. He's a great guy, and
And
I miss, since the studios moved to Arkansas, I miss catching up with him and seeing the regulars that used to hang around
you
there.
know,
So
I was just saying that to Scott the other day. I said, man, we need to plan a Starbase Studios reunion
that would be great.
where we can all get together. I said, because
Yeah,
some of these people, I never see them anymore. And I thought that'd be a good
yeah,
idea. Of course, we couldn't do it now, but
yeah.
in the future, we need to have a reunion,
I would
breakfast or
love that.
dinner or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
I thought
great.
that, I thought that would be a really cool idea.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe by the summertime we can all catch up somehow or some way.
Yeah.
Even if it's eating outdoors or whatever, that would be great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We'll have to
um,
do something.
yeah.
So, uh, so we, I remember sending you the script
Hmm.
to Legacy, and Ben Richards,
Yeah, Ben
who
Richardson. Yep.
yeah, he was our acting coach,
Yeah, that's right.
and he did sound and he did editing.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Uh, Seems like uh, he also chose Kelly because he knew her to play Lisa.
Right. Yeah, she was somebody he had acted with, I think, or they had gone to the same acting school. I forget which one it was, but
Yeah, you remember initially we had uh, Ayana
yeah. Hmm.
as Lisa Kennedy
That's
character,
right. Yeah.
and then we had really too many people. We had my daughter who played my daughter,
Yeah.
Bishop's daughter. Then we
Hmm.
had uh, Taurus, and the name is escaping me right now. I should be able to remember
April.
April
That's
as
right. Yeah.
Taurus. Taurus was actually named after Voyager's Taurus.
Right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And let's see, things didn't work out with Ayana. She was actually set to, and actually, when we first did the lighting test, Ayana was she? No, she wasn't in the lighting test. I don't believe. But when we first shot, she was actually Lisa's character.
That's right. Yeah. And actually she
Yeah,
was in the I think she she was in the lighting test, or maybe it was just you. I forget.
Yeah,
We
well, she may have been there, but it seems
yeah.
like when you done the test, I was the only one in it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense because you had the uniform and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, did you actually as that character?
Oh, say that again. Sorry.
Do you actually have recorded footage of her playing that character?
I'm sure I
Because
do somewhere.
I
Yeah.
think all I have is like some behind the scenes video of her. I never actually saw her in that role. I think it'd be really neat kind of to see that.
Yeah. I
Uh,
may. I'd have to look through some archives to see. That would go back 7, 8 years, so I'd have to
yeah.
dig around for it. So
Yeah, she I think we shot I don't remember how many days we shot with her as that character, but I remember one of the big problems with Legacy was that not only was it freezing, I mean, it was so cold we had to put space heaters in front of us to stop
yeah.
the heat coming from our mouths, but uh never having acted before, uh remembering those lines was really tough.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember you and Ben actually looking at the script and, actually a lot of the lines were changed
Right.
because they were just too long. And
Uh-huh.
I wasn't experienced in it. It's a lot easier now, but back then it was really kind of intimidating
Yeah.
to be in front of a camera and remember lines. When you're first doing it, it's like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me. I'm messing
Right.
up. And
That's
and
why I work behind the camera.
yeah, it it was really an experience. Now, I'm assuming that you and Ben saw the footage of Ayana first,
Uh-huh.
and we ended up replacing the character with another
Right.
actress.
Yeah.
What did I never saw the footage of her actually playing the character?
hmm
Uh, what did you think of that footage? Why did you think that it wasn't working?
I
Or was that more of a Ben thinking, since he was the acting coach? Was that Ben saying, "No, I don't think this is working"?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. We sat down and we just felt like it wasn't working, at the time. And
Do you mean like chemistry wise, or just the delivery of her lines, or the look
I
of her?
I think it may have been a mix of things, the kind of the um, chemistry and delivery, just a combo of it, So um,
You
it's
know
it's
what I always thought was that Ayana she's really a beautiful woman,
very much so. Yeah.
and for that role, when I look back at some of the old stills and the old behind the scenes video that I took, it's kind of like she
Gotcha.
doesn't look like this. She doesn't look like this seasoned character that's been on this ship for a while. For one thing, she was, I think, what was she, in her 20s?
Probably. I mean,
Yeah, she was
yeah.
really young, and
Uh-huh.
uh she was she just looked almost like a model on
Uh-huh.
the
Right.
bridge.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when Kelly came in, when you compare the two, it just looks like she's more believable.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the key things there is the believability, because Ayana, I think she could have played an ensign or somebody that was just
Yeah.
coming aboard, kind of a thing. So,
I
um,
always felt kind of bad that uh, we didn't use her in the role, but unfortunately, in filmmaking, a lot of those choices are you have to make.
yeah,
Sometimes somebody's got their heart set on playing a role, but uh,
right,
overall, you look at the film as a whole and what's going to work for the film, and you sometimes it doesn't work.
right,
And
yeah,
that's not saying anything about her because she definitely, like I said, very beautiful, but
yeah,
she
very
just didn't
much.
fit the role. And I remember when I told her, um, and I'm trying to remember exactly how I told her. I think I said something like, "Well, it's we've all looked at footage, and you're trying to break this as easy as you can without hurting someone's feelings, because that was the last thing I wanted to do, was to hurt her feelings."
Right,
And so I said, it I think that we need to go into a different direction for the character, because she's supposed to be this seasoned officer,
right,
and you're really young, and it just doesn't really fit for the story. And I remember her reaction. She was really kind of upset,
Yeah, yeah,
and I took the brunt of her anger, and I just, I didn't want to say, well, this person said this person said that, and I just said, it's not working, is how I explained it.
hmm
So, and she was hurt by it, which is understandable because she really wanted to be in the film,
yeah,
and so I understand. I didn't come out of it feeling like or thinking, who does she think she is, or anything like that. But I felt
sure,
bad because we had to make that
right.
decision.
Yeah, and
And I
she was great to work with.
she was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
was
she
really
really.
fun.
hmm
And I remember, it kind of bothered me for a while.
Yeah.
And I think it was during Crosses to Bear. I wanted her to play a character. So I reached out to her, and she said that she would, but her schedule never lined up with the shoot.
Okay.
That film, the studio was closing, and we had to get it done fast. But
Yeah.
I, 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 I guess even to this day, I feel just a little bit bad about it. I wished we could have put her in something, but who knows? Maybe we still can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the possibilities are endless. For storytelling, whatever you have ahead for Valiant, I think I'm sure there's something out there. So
But Kelly, God, she was a natural. She was good.
yeah.
Kelly too. When I watched Legacy, is that it looked like her and Bishop did have a history together. That they had been friends, and
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, she was the perfect choice.
Yeah. She did great, and I think the age factor really helped kind of sell that
Yeah,
idea. That hey, there's a possibility you guys have been in service together for 10 years, or whatever. So
I remember. It seems like the first night we shot when we actually had Kelly and April. Or did we do those separate? Maybe we did those separate because I remember a shoot with April and we were all just me and her.
right, yeah, and that
And
may have been earlier in the day. I don't know.
it seems
Yeah,
like we were really late in the night.
yeah,
Uh, and I remember Richard Wells, he was there. Him and Scott were there.
yeah.
And I remember side and going to sleep because we were in there for so long.
Yeah, yeah.
and and Richard, he made a comment the next day. He said, "Man, I don't know what kind of film this is going to be because all I see you guys doing is talking, man." Like,
Yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah.
we got to talk. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we really worked hard on Legacy, though.
we did. Yeah.
We never had a lot of money for these films,
hmm
and so we tried to put our efforts into the story to tell the
Yeah,
story, and I think that when we first talked, we always kind of approached Valiant with uh, some kind of realism and being relatable to the
yeah.
problems we have today. And I
Right.
think a lot of the origin of uh, the story was due to the fact that I never had a close relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't around.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I only saw him maybe twice my entire life.
Wow.
So I think that kind of inspired the gap between to where he'd never really been in her life, but not because he didn't want to, but because he had this career.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about Legacy that I've always thought was kind of different was fan reaction to Bishop and Abby because a lot of people say, "Who does she think she is? This is a brat. She's talking to her dad like this." And I'm kind of surprised by that reaction because I kind of thought people would be like, "Well, I understand her because dad's never there and she's taking care of the grandfather."
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Is that the reaction you thought that relationship would have generated from people?
I would not have guessed that coming from the people.
Yeah,
I think I think especially in our modern age, a lot of parents put work over kids, and that's understandable that kids might have that reaction. And having myself, I'm a Navy brat. My dad, was out on a ship for a year, and the Carl Vinson aircraft carrier actually, and he was stationed elsewhere. So Although that was not my experience, I could see how some people would have that experience, you
Well,
know. So
I think that one of the things too, um, about Valiant is that I always wanted to push barriers.
yeah,
And I wanted it to be true to Star Trek, but I wanted to kind of push it, uh, and do things that maybe we hadn't seen too much of.
right.
And having Abby use a curse word, I think, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I think maybe if she had a just, out with her father without, calling him a bastard,
Oh yeah, right. Uh-huh.
maybe people would kind of look at her in a different light, because there's been kind of a reaction to her, to her dad.
Right.
But I don't know. I think it's a tough situation to be in, and I think, the whole thing is a reminder to life that, it's not easy being a parent.
Right.
It's not easy juggling work and,
Right.
oh, it says our internet connection is unstable. Can you see that?
It hadn't told me that on this end, so
Well,
um,
just clear it up, so I guess it's
okay.
okay. But I think there's a lot of value in the first episode. Being there for your kids,
Yeah.
finding a common ground for your relationship, what's important in your life,
Hmm.
family.
Yeah.
So I think, in the end, what I try to do with Valiant is, explore the human condition. That's how I've
Yeah.
always seen Star Trek. I've
Right.
always seen it as examining humanity.
Right. Yeah. And I think some people forget is with the character Abby, she had lost her mother too, you know. So it
Yeah.
was just Bishop as the parent. Um and really the grandfather was her parent, you know, in
And
that sense. So
realistically, if your mom's gone and you're at home taking care of your grandfather and he's sick, dad's nowhere to be seen, I think there's going to be some natural animosity in real life.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I
There
think you're going to blame one parent. The parent you have is, he's never here. I don't have any help. I mean, could you
right.
imagine a 14-year-old arranging a burial for her grandfather?
That's a lot to go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's gonna affect people in different ways, you know. So
And the thing I always love about Star Trek is no matter what situation they're in, they're always hopeful
yeah.
most of the time by the end of the episode. And then by the end of Legacy, Bishop gets this new influx of energy. He's looking forward for the future,
Yeah.
and, he's happy. So I wanted it to end on a happy note, to where,
Yeah.
uh, I think if I had, any regrets about Legacy, I would say that it's, that we didn't have Kelly to follow up in other films, because she was just so good.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And
She's a
she Yeah, and she's really a sweet lady.
yeah, and fun to
And,
work with. You know,
yeah.
she really brought a level. You know, her character is more serious in the film, but behind the scenes, she brought a level of fun to.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and even in character, she had so much passion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, she was just so believable.
Yeah.
And that whole film, I really feel like when we were doing that, we felt like we were doing something special,
Yeah. Absolutely.
because in Oklahoma we never had a fan film, a Star Trek
Well,
fan film.
yeah, I was going to say that's the first fan
You
film
know,
out of Oklahoma. You know.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, if you compare it in terms of other fan films, that were, shoot, some of them, thousands of dollars to make.
Hmm.
All we had was a lot of passion and a lot of heart,
Yeah.
and we had,
And
and
space heaters.
yeah. And Valiant has always been kind of small scale, because, technically all we had was, behind the scenes, you, Ben,
Right.
Scott, and Richard.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we had.
Right.
And, it never, I guess, Ties That Bind was probably the biggest production in terms of people behind the scenes, but for the most, we really had very many people, and you've taken on so many, jobs in bringing these films to, the internet. And, wow, I mean, like for Legacy, I remember before we had a date to release it, and before we got it released, your hard drive crashed, or was that
Yeah, I
while
think
you?
so. Yeah, I had an older computer at the time, and I believe it did. it did conk out on me. So, and I was working somewhere else at the time too. So I would, I'd go to work late at night and on weekends too to really push to get the film out, by the deadline or whatever we had set. So, um,
I, I'm trying to remember. Did we make our deadline? I think we were maybe a few days late.
possibly, yeah.
Maybe.
I don't remember probably because I didn't sleep much around that time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And I remember you and Ben like together editing and
yes. Well, you're thinking of Legacy, right? Or
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Ben
Uh,
was at your home when you were putting
That's
the film
right. Yeah.
together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm confusing it. I'm confusing it with our second production.
Yeah, because I remember I was talking to you one day
Yeah,
while you and Ben were just, right at editing. And I
that's
think that
right.
might have been
Yeah.
the day that we were supposed to release it.
Yeah, we were premiering it at SoonerCon that day,
Yeah,
and so we
that's
had been
right.
up all night. For some reason, the software decided it didn't like the video files we'd shot on. So every time we loaded it up, there was a red blank screen, and we just could not figure out why. And I think it was some kind of video codec issue. But we were editing on my Windows PC machine, and so what I
Yeah,
had
that's
to
when
do,
turned against Windows forever.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. And what's funny is I had to drag out of my closet my old Mac Pro that I had used for 5 or 6 years before that, and that's
Wow.
that's what saved us. Is
I didn't know that.
I was able to reload everything onto the Mac Pro, get it rendered out, get the film together. Well, Ben was able. Basically, I was on one machine. Ben was on the PC trying to cobble things together, and the Mac is really what saved us. And I think we were burning the disc to play for SoonerCon about 45 minutes before the premiere, and uh,
Uh,
and we had a 30-minute drive to get to
Yeah,
the
because yeah, that's
convention.
right.
And
Yeah, that's right. Because I remember you, yeah, showing up with the disc.
yeah,
It felt like Star Trek the motion picture all over
right, yeah.
again, where they're getting the film reels the exact day of the premiere.
Yeah, gosh, I can imagine how Paramount must have felt at the
I
time,
I can imagine
So
somebody was probably peeing their pants,
yeah,
being so nervous. Oh my God, are
yeah,
they coming? Are they coming?
right, yeah. And I think I remember a few text messages from you saying, "Hey, are we going to make it?" Or kind of thing. uh, but hey, we did it, and I think that was my first time drinking coffee in my life. You know, we were up all night and whatnot, but you know, at the time it's very stressful. But you can look back on these memories and laugh
Yeah,
and think about the
yeah.
fun that it
That's
was.
that's just like when shit's hitting the pan. Someone will say, "Just remember, one day you'll be laughing at
Right.
this." But at the time, you're thinking, "No, I
Oh
won't."
yeah, yeah. My wife and I will look at each other and say the same thing a lot now that we have 3 kids, and there's many late nights with that sometimes. So, um,
Legacy. It in the scope of fan films at the time. There wasn't any guidelines or anything like that.
yeah,
It was a small film in terms of what these other productions were able to do with special effects and we only had one set. All we had was a bridge set.
right.
But I remember being really prideful and proud. I remember when you released the trailer, when you first made the first trailer, and I was at work, and I don't remember if you used Dropbox way back then. Was it even around then?
I think it was, but I recall. Didn't we put it on YouTube somehow?
Yeah, maybe you
Or
sent me a link.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
that
it
might have
was
been it.
back then you wasn't Red Share Media, you were something else.
The Red Chair Pictures. I think at the
Maybe.
time, yeah,
And you sent me the link and I was at work. And we'd worked so hard on this thing. I don't remember. Seems like You remember exactly how long it took for us to shoot Legacy? I'm thinking maybe 4 months.
It may have been, yeah. I feel like it because it was spaced out and kind of on whoever was
And
available
yeah,
at the time.
we were
So
yeah we were working on everybody's schedule, and a lot
yeah,
of times Kelly was busy with other work,
yeah,
and and it was hard. The whole process was hard because we were just learning,
yeah,
And I remember you sent me the link to the trailer, and I looked at it at work, and I really got emotional
huh,
because I was just so proud that we had created something.
yeah.
And I literally, I was in an office with a bunch of people, and I literally, had to. I was a little bit embarrassed because I actually got teary eyed.
Wow, huh.
And I don't know if I ever told you, but yeah, I literally had to like go and kind of hide because I didn't
Huh.
want people to see me like that.
Well,
But I was just so, so proud that
yeah,
we made something,
yeah, right.
and it was just a great feeling.
Yeah.
And you worked so hard, and Ben worked so hard. And I don't know if I ever asked you what today. What do you think of Legacy? Because I
Uh,
mean, when's the last time you actually watched it?
oh, it's probably been a little while since I've watched it.
Yeah,
You know,
I haven't
for
watched it completely either in a long time.
yeah, for me as a somebody that's you know in production or whatever, it's sometimes it's hard to look back on old work because in a sense you're looking back on your immaturity, you know, um, and by that I mean how you know at this point in my career I've developed a lot of skills that I didn't have back then. So to 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 look at it from this vantage point, look back then, it sometimes it's like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, or I would do this differently,
Mm,
or whatever. So, in some sense, I can understand how Lucas or Spielberg might feel about older films, how they would go back and constantly, feel the urge to tweak them. I can understand that, how you would fall into that trap. Thankfully, I haven't felt the urge to go back and change it because I think you know it's important to have those things as they were released, because we want to see where we come from, or what that story says at the time. So, um, but yeah, it's looking back on it, it's amazing to think, wow, we pulled that off. That was great. My memories with it are all behind the scenes. The fun that we had, the late night
yeah,
freezing overnight at the
yeah.
studio with the space heaters, and I recall we filmed in Norman at the apartment complex, right at the
Hmm.
um, and yeah, just all the behind the scenes memory, and then of course, I guess that one of the bigger memories is the post production side, is dealing with all the computer stuff that we had to deal with, and rush it out to get it burned to disk and all of that. So, um, they're all great memories. It's stuff that you look back on, like I say, and you smile because,
Yeah, we shot uh, the daughter stuff in Norman, and
yeah,
I remember her scenes went really easy because she just seemed to be a natural.
yeah,
Uh, and I don't think she'd ever acted before, but her scenes went really well. And I remember Ben being impressed by them,
yeah,
so that was pretty easy to do.
right,
And
yeah,
that room, I just really loved filming in that room. It was just such a nice room.
yeah.
And I remember, and I didn't know you had done this, but uh, Scott Johnson let us use his model of the Constitution class ship.
That's right. Yeah,
And I don't remember, you're directing, and we didn't mention that yet. You're directing and shooting this film,
that's right. Yeah,
and uh, the scene where Bishop looks over at the ship. I don't remember if there was actually a ship. I guess it was there, but I don't remember you directing me to actually look over there. But I guess you did. But I don't remember
yeah.
that at all.
I'm not. I don't remember it either. You know,
Was I even looking at the ship, or did you just put that scene? Because I don't remember you filming a close up of the model.
yeah, you know, I feel like I have a little bit of a memory of filming it, and then in post production, I altered it to say Valiant on the hull because it
Yeah, that
was
really. Yeah,
Enterprise. But
you changed the registry number and everything, and I thought,
yeah,
wow, I wasn't expecting that. Well, I
yeah,
wasn't even expecting to see the ship,
right, uh-huh, yeah,
but
and yeah, I think you know, I can't say for sure, but I'm sure it was just part of me getting coverage, you know, for, you know, B-roll for.
the whole thing was just, I trusted you to like handle all that stuff because, man, I didn't know anything about it. And I'm like, Brady, whatever you want to do, do it. Because I remember telling you, you're in this field, you know what you're doing. Whatever you want to do, I trust your judgment because
Mhm,
I have no clue what's
right.
best. That's why a lot of the times, whenever it came to a shot, and even when we did animals, you would tell the actors, well, stand here, let's get it from this angle, and so on and so forth, because you always knew what's best when it comes to photography.
Hmm.
So that's why I felt like you deserved a first AD credit, because
Hmm.
you were if I had to set up those shots, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Hmm.
You'd probably say, this isn't working, Michael. We need to do this from this angle, and
Oh, sure.
so
Uh-huh. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I I I owe you a whole lot
Well,
for what you brought to Valiant,
well, I
because we couldn't have done it without you.
well, and I appreciate that, and I'm honored to be a part. You know, as I like to say a lot. You know, thanks for letting me play in the sandbox. You know, so
You know
uh,
how we thought of the name Valiant, don't you? Or do you remember?
yeah, I feel like was it? Did you have family that grew up, or you grew up in a town called
Well,
Valiant,
that
Oklahoma?
just happened to be
Yeah.
that just happened to be a coincidence. But
Okay.
actually, when we were thinking of the name, it was Richard Wells and myself,
Okay.
and I was saying, Richard, we need a name, a ship that hasn't been used, because everybody was using Starship this and that and this and that.
Right.
And Richard said, at first I thought about Pegasus,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
because that would have been named after the Battlestar Galactica ship. I don't know
Yeah.
if you ever
Uh-huh.
watched the '70s show with the Lord Bridges as a what was his name in that episode? It's called The Living Legend, but I can't think of his character's name. But his ship was called the Pegasus, so I thought,
Okay.
that's a cool name.
Yeah.
And then Richard said, well, there's Richard actually took it upon himself to look in manuals and online and do a little research.
Wow.
And he came up with the name Valiant. I think he got it from the technical manual, I believe. I'm not for sure.
Franz Joseph.
Yeah, but he said,
Yeah.
well, he said Valiant's never been used
Wow.
in anything. So what do you
Uh-huh.
think of that? And then I thought, well, that sounds cool, because I used to live in a town called Valiant, but I kind of wanted to use Pegasus, so I was a little bit disappointed. But in terms of Starfleet and all, we knew that Valiant, the name, had a little bit of history behind it, because it was
Right.
in the
Where
Word
no
Old
man's
Man Is
gone.
Gone before. They mentioned
Right.
Valiant.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if they're going to have a Valiant, they'd probably make a Constitution class in honor of that name too, because all
Yeah.
hands were lost. So
Yeah. Kind
there
of
we
the
had Valiant.
lineage. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And I
great.
thought a little bit of depth to the story too. And it's always interesting when Legacy came out, one of the comments was that what somebody said, well, what's Valiant? What's the significance of Valiant? And some of the guys explaining, well, that used to be a ship that was in Where No Man Has Gone before. So it automatically had this built-in history that I think worked for the story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of. You know, we know the Enterprise goes back quite a ways.
Yeah.
It's great to have other ships that do the same. You know, in
And
Valiant. So.
I kind of felt like uh one of the things about the original series to me was that the Enterprise was just the biggest character as Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Right.
I mean, the
Yeah.
Enterprise always stood out. I remember when I was a kid watching Star Trek, I was also there to see the Enterprise. I wanted to see the Enterprise.
Right. Yeah. That's a place
And
you wanted to live and work. You know.
yeah,
There's a
I
place.
just love that ship. Love
Yeah.
that ship.
Yeah.
And that was one of the joys of the original Star Trek, seeing the Enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And it's a
I
beautiful, timeless design too. You
yep.
know. So.
And I just wanted to give the Valiant some history
Mhm.
and make it more of a character than
Yeah.
just a ship.
Right. Yeah.
But
And
we did go back to. You said you didn't like to revisit old work, but we did have to go back when we filmed the extra sequences,
that's
the
right.
sick bay scene. So we did go back.
Yeah, we did go back. That's right. And we added more scenes, which I think helped the story and
Yeah, you know, I'd always those scenes were written, but so for Grissom, Starship Grissom, Richard had made a sick bay.
yeah.
So we went back, and you were more than happy to go back and shoot it. And
Yeah.
we didn't have a master copy of Legacy, though. Remember it? I believe it
That's right.
crashed, and we you lost all the master files.
Yeah, that was part of again the PC Strikes Back. I think it did
Yeah.
eventually die, and that I lost a lot of stuff. And actually, it was a RAID drive. I think I had too that crashed, something like that. And I just um, I hadn't. It's stupid of me, but I hadn't backed everything up like I should have, and so a lot of it was lost. So
Well,
um,
you think about it, and you just really don't think that your drive's going to crash. I mean, it happens, but
yeah, yeah, it does happen. And at the time I was using a different brand than I use now, which is what I use now is far more reliable. And I back up more often too. So I can't tell you how many hard drives I have animals, stacked on, backed up on. So
so
um,
when you edited the new footage into Legacy, you had to use just the existing copy of the edit you had, right?
yeah, if I recall, I basically took the rendered file that I had and then kind of cut in, which what we added uh, was really just the prologue there, if I recall, right? Am
Mm-hmm.
I thinking right? So um, to add that in um, wasn't too complicated, you know, with the rest of the edit. So
Did it match up in terms of visual clarity? Did you feel like it was the same as
yeah,
what you
because
shot before?
the file I had before was still a HD file, so all the specs were there. Um, so it may have been now what I had may have been a little bit more compressed, but um, I don't feel like I don't know if we lost a whole lot of quality in terms of that. You know what I mean? So
Eventually, if you have a digital file sitting on your hard drive, uh, does it actually start to degrade after time? Does that happen?
no,
Or it
no, it's not like film, which film eventually decays over time, breaks down. But digital files are different in the sense that it's all bits of data, kind of in this electronic medium. So um, it doesn't degrade in the sense unless a hard drive degrades, but at that point you've probably lost the file. So. But the clarity is always there, at least in my experience. So
um, was Legacy the first film that you made that you actually directed?
yeah, so up to that point, I was used to commercial work and really more on the production side. So I hadn't done a lot of directing up to that point. So it was a big task, to take on a short film like that and then direct it and all the other stuff that goes into it. So, but it's something I'm very grateful for because experiences like that they help you grow and really develop, and I feel like that was kind of a stepping stone in my own career, So um, you always it's always something you want to do in your career is grow and step with every project, step forward. So
So, would
um,
you say between Legacy and Animals, in terms of what you've been able to accomplish technically? I mean, if you look at Animals, it's leaps and bounds in terms of special effects
Oh yeah.
from Legacy. But would you say that's more because of software, or would you say that's more because of you?
Well, it's a combo, I think, because the software grows and develops over time, and my
Well,
knowledge.
if you had the software the same that you used on Legacy, but now using it on animals, do you think the effects would have been of a higher quality, even using the same software because of what you've learned?
So if I say I went back in time now and worked on Legacy, yeah, I think the effects would have been better. Yeah, for sure. So just
Was
because.
it? I never asked you. Was it hard to do the post effects that you did for Legacy? You never really talked about it too much.
I don't feel like it was too hard. I think for the Legacy we had Craig do the ship shots, if I recall,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
And you
So
and you you put the TOS shuttle in when we
that's
were
right.
panning down.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, moving the camera while the ship moves, that seems kind of hard to me, but what do I know? I'm not a special effects person. But was that a hard shot to do?
Well, I mean, that's the great thing about software now is we have tracking. So you basically can take a little marker and say, I want to the camera's moving, so I'm going to track this point on the screen. You put that marker there, and you tell it to process it frame by frame, and uh, it comes down to how clear of a shot you have, the resolution and everything. If it's good, you can get a really good, accurate track. The computer can really track it well. So in that case, with that scene, we had some good tracking markers in there, and it tracked well. And I used that to kind of track the shuttle in the shot too.
So we
So
had you did the shuttle shot, and then of course one of the and it's always amazing to me how you'll see a shot in a film that maybe lasts 5 seconds, and
yeah,
you go by behind the scenes, and it took them a week to do it.
yeah,
But
right,
there's a scene where you did the headstone, you changed it.
yeah, uh-huh,
Uh, you did the shuttle, and then we had the apartments that Bishop lived in that you did.
that's right. Yeah, that was a
Uh,
visual effect shot.
yeah, where did
Yeah.
you actually get that design from?
That was if I recall, the model came with the software that I was using at that point, the plugin. So, and I just incorporated that. And, again, this is me still learning 3D modeling and
Yeah,
all of that.
that's
So,
kind of the cool thing for me, given the field that you're in. And when you do movies like this, it just I kind of take comfort in the fact that you're learning, and it
mhm,
progresses your career.
yeah, yeah,
Because more than anything, doing Valiant is probably a lot more intensive than what you'll probably do in other things.
yeah.
So hopefully it'll be like when you get to other things, it's like, oh, that's a piece of cake, because
Yeah,
I've made starships. I mean,
yeah, no, and that's the beauty of working on this is you know I can take the same skill set that I really pushed myself to learn on Valiant and apply it to other work as well. So for me, everything that I do in this career is a step forward, hopefully to better effects or better skills and editing and all of that. So um, I
well,
just
I forgot to mention that we also had Shirley
that's right.
as
Yeah.
Admiral Parker. We actually did those green screen scenes in your garage, and yeah,
Yeah.
we shot those, and
Yeah.
she was great.
Yeah. She
She was
was
really great.
fantastic. And
Yeah.
I think she was sitting on an old broken down desk, if I recall.
Yeah,
So
a old wooden table. Me, you, and Ben were there.
that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. In the garage. Thankfully, it
Yep.
wasn't as cold as her other shoot,
Yep.
but
And
yeah.
I was feeding her the lines, and she
Yeah.
was she was great. She's great in the film. I mean, I think
Yeah.
she pretty much embodies the character.
Yeah. And she holds
She
that
was really
admiral
good.
title very well.
Yep.
So yeah.
I agree. She was great.
So and fun to
So
work
it
with. Yeah.
yeah, Shirley, I really need to reach out to her. I hadn't talked to her in a while,
Yeah.
but everybody we worked with were just really super nice.
Right. Yeah. We've
Yeah,
been really fortunate, and it's always been. I think it's always been fun. Anytime we've
yeah,
gotten together, it's like a bunch of
and
kids in a sandbox. What can I
and
say?
you've one thing I've always admired about you, Brady, is that you've always been really so patient. Um, you know, even when times were a little stressful, you always were this force that was calm. You kept
Mhm.
a calm demeanor about yourself, and I think uh, it made working with you and shooting with you just so much better because you're always so calm and
I appreciate that.
your
Thank you.
demeaning is so peaceful and I don't think I've ever seen you angry in 7 8 years. I've never seen you angry. And you just, I mean, I know I say it a lot. I probably say it so much that you probably think it's a running joke now, but you are just really the kindest person and one of the best human beings I have ever known.
Well, I appreciate that.
And
Thank you. Yeah.
it's like I told your dad, I said, your son's an angel. I mean,
You might get a different perspective from the wife or whatever, but
I really think you're hiding wings back there.
oh.
But I couldn't, I feel like, sometimes in life you meet people that are just really outstanding, and I think you're one of those people.
Appreciate that. Thank
And
you.
you're a reminder to me that, even when times are not so good and things aren't going right, you're a reminder to me that, there's good people out there and you're one of those people that have always been a good person. And
Well, thank
wow,
you.
it's just
Yeah.
like, it's nice to have a reminder in your life when you're down on humanity that there's people like you out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, I have to express the same sentiment towards you. You've always been calm, and I don't think I've seen you angry at all in our years of
No,
working together, but,
uh, I, I
so
probably felt a little bit of frustration
sure.
while we were shooting sometimes, but
Yeah.
the thing is how upset can you get? I mean, people are volunteering their time
Right. Yeah.
and
And,
times when we were shooting late and
yeah.
people have kids at home and
Right.
I just feel like I, if whatever I felt most of the time was inside. I mean, it wasn't important enough for me to get all
Sure.
upset. And plus, what good? I kind of look at it as a practical kind of thing. What is getting blowing up, getting angry going to do to help the shoot anyway?
Right.
Nothing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
It only poisons the well, so,
and if I think about it, I don't think I've ever really gotten angry. I think more frustration than
yeah.
anything, but
Yeah.
never really angry.
Yeah, and as making a film is a magnet for Murphy's Law. Anything that can
And
go wrong will.
yeah, and I
So,
sit back and films like really big films where you
yeah,
have just so many people. I always wonder how do those directors mentally stay calm and do all this stuff with so much going on. It's
right.
just enough to drive you crazy.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of decisions at every point. With every shot set up, all of that. Yeah.
And one thing
That
about Valiant is that we always kind of approached it to be a fun time.
right. Yeah.
Uh, if you think about behind the scenes drama on some fan films, we've never had that.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah, and I think that's a testament to you because you've been able to really exemplify that idea of, hey, we're all here to have fun, let's have a good time, and that when you're around leadership like that, it resonates, and it carries through everybody,
And
so
there were
uh,
times when some of the actors or somebody might have been upset.
sure.
And I always tried my best to diffuse it and say, well, okay, I understand. No problem. We'll take care
Yeah.
of it.
Right.
It just, I wanted everybody to be happy.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
because,
a important on set. If you're
yeah.
shooting and you know people are at each other's throats, it's not going to be fun. So, and I
And plus,
can't.
I always try to put myself in their place because you never know what outside forces they're going through,
That's
or
true.
maybe
Yeah.
things aren't so great at home, or maybe they're stressed out about work, or you just
Yeah.
never know. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I'll always treat people's problems as, I don't know everything what's going on in their lives. So,
Exactly.
I just,
Yeah.
you know, uh, my grandfather lived to be 90 years old. And I remember one time asking him, Gramps, how did you make it so long? And his answer was, I always treated people like I wanted to be treated.
That's great. That's
Like,
great.
okay, I'll
The gold.
remember that.
Yeah, the golden rule. That's great. Yeah, that's a great thing to live by.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do, though. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I think it
Sometimes
would be a much better world if we would, treat people like we would want to be treated. That's a
exactly
good rule to live by.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's because I think that rule tells us, we're all human. When you boil it down, we're all the same in a sense. And if I want to be treated well, and I treat other people well, you know, how I want to be
Well,
treated. That's
we we showed the first cut of Legacy at SoonerCon,
that's
but did you
right. Yeah.
remember that when we did the special edition, I believe we showed that at SoonerCon too.
Yeah. Was that the
Yeah,
following year? I think.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, and if I recall correctly, did we put for Leonard at the beginning of that movie? Because
yes,
Nimoy had just died. So
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So
And, before we actually started making this video, I had mentioned tweaks on animals, and
yeah,
that was one of them. One of the, I guess it somehow slipped our mind, but originally we had intended on putting some dedications at the end of the film on the
that's
Trek stars that had
right.
passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that I think about it, I'm not for sure if I gave you a list of actors anyway, because
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't think I did, but it's just
I think it was a conversation. Yeah.
yeah, I remember the conversation, but there's just like so many things you're focusing on when you're trying to get a film out. You just
Yeah.
and it seems like it's what's funny about filming to me is that you'll watch the completed film and then you'll say, man, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing how you
Yeah.
know a fan watching will say, well, why did they do that? All they had to do was
Yeah.
and and in Valiant, we're always, there's so few of us that you do have intentions of doing something, but a lot of times the only thing you can say is, I forgot.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. It's true. Or you ran out of time.
yeah,
There's
I
only
forgot.
yeah. Oops.
It happens. It happens all the time, and I think it's
Yeah.
funny how when you'll watch a film and there'll be something just so obviously that they could have changed or just fixed,
Yeah.
and you'll listen to the director or someone after the fact, and they'll give you this big long excuse about how this happened, and I'm thinking, just tell me you forgot, man.
Yeah.
That's,
Right. Yeah. Well,
but
I take comfort because I think it was the second Jurassic Park movie, The Lost World. There's a scene where a triceratops is wrecking some cars or something, but you have to really look, but it's not even fully rendered. Like the legs disappear or something
oh
in the middle of it, and I take comfort that sometimes you can slip things by people and they won't notice. So um,
well, it's like years and years, forever. I was
yeah.
not aware that in Star Wars, when the stormtrooper came through the door, he hit his head.
Oh, I
Did you
didn't
notice
realize
that?
that. No, no, I didn't.
Yeah, when they're coming, I think it's a scene where they're locked into this room, and the stormtroopers have just unlocked the door, and I think it's the room that C-3PO and R2-D2 were in.
Okay.
And a group of stormtroopers come through a door that slides up, and one of them in the back hits his helmet on the door.
Oh, wow.
And it had to be pointed out to me, but I
Yeah.
never noticed it. Never
Interesting.
noticed it.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it when you look at it though, it's so obviously funny. It's like, my God, I can't believe they left that in.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
But
one thing about filmmaking to me is that we're human beings. We make
yeah.
mistakes,
Right.
and sometimes I feel like uh, mistakes are better left in because I think it's more realistic. Now, a
Right.
lot of people
Yeah.
might say, no, no, that needs to come out. But I mean, sometimes you maybe you'll walk and you'll stumble a little bit. It
Right.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
think there's a danger in making things too perfect. You kind of lose that sense of reality a little bit. Even if you are making another reality through a film, you know, it can be too perfect. I'll go back to another Jurassic Park movie. This is the first one, but if you ever watch that sequence where they're climbing the fence, and the timer's running out because the electricity may come on or whatever,
yeah, the kids.
he's all over the place in that scene. Some shots he's lower, some shots he's higher, and then he goes back and he's lower again. So,
Well,
uh,
and the thing is too, on a big budgeted movie like that, surely they had somebody for continuity. You would have
yeah,
thought.
yeah, you would think,
Uh,
but again, that tells me, the first time I ever saw that movie, it didn't take me out of the story. So,
yeah,
if you
and
have
I
a
think
good
that's what's
story,
important.
yeah,
And
exactly.
filmmaking to me is a very imperfect medium.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost it's just rife with things that can go wrong.
Oh yeah, you're dealing with
Uh,
real life. you
so
know.
when you make a story that good story uh, is so engrossing that people don't really care.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you don't care.
right.
I mean, like for instance, that stormtrooper hitting his head on the wall. You think that would have stuck out, but I was into the story,
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to
and
notice it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I didn't care. It's like
right.
things with animals, and I
Uh
would
huh.
say, well, Brady, we need to do this because people are going to notice, and you would say, well, they're going to be watching the story, so they won't notice,
Yeah.
and I would say these are Star Trek fans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We did have that discussion a few times.
but